What up, fight fans? This is Square Circle Production, and this is my new rant. This is my thoughts on Bellatore 149. Okay, the two co-main events for the Bellatore 149 were Kimbo Slice versus Dada 5000 and Ken Shamrock versus Royce Gracie 3. Okay, just to get into it, man, it was actually a disappointment. On paper it looked really good, it looked like it was going to be solid, but it didn't play out well in both events, both fights. It was really, man. It really was a bad look. I mean, the Kimbo Slice Dada 5000 fight was terrible. I mean, and I'm a huge Kimbo fan. I'm a huge Kimbo supporter. But man, it was a snooze fest, man. It was terrible. And it was due to the conditioning or lack thereof on the part of both fighters. As expected, as I felt like Kimbo won. Okay. Now, the early reports was, what they're saying is that Dada 5000 was actually suffering from heart failure in the waning moments of that fight. But the conditioning or lack of conditioning was evident throughout the whole fight. Kimbo was able to outlast, and that was due to the exposure that Kimbo had as far as going through the rigors of the training that he went through when he was on the UFC's what's that called? The Ultimate Fighter. When he was on that season of the Ultimate Fighter, in my opinion, he was in the best shape of his life. And even then, his conditioning has always been a hindrance to him. Okay, going back, when he was in an internet sensation, conditioning and things like that really didn't come into play. Because street fighting's a whole different thing anyway. I mean, if you take a boxer's, any professional fighter, prize fighter style fighter, and you make them fight bare knuckle or, something of that nature, the way you fight is different. You're not going to throw as many punches because the potential to break your hand exists with every punch you throw. You understand what I'm trying to say? You hit a bone, you hit something the wrong way. And especially in a street fight, there's more opportunities for you to break hands and things. So, conditioning is not as much, because you're not going to be whipping off punches like you would with the protection of gloves. Even those little MMA type boxing gloves, it still gives your hand a certain amount of protection. And when you go naked out in the field, it's a whole different experience. Okay, now, but sticking with the fight, the analysis of the fight, these guys was gassed, with a minute left in the first round. Second round, they were so tired. I did a video a while back called MMA Must Stand Up. If you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. And I was kind of complaining about how a lot of MMA fights, these guys go to the ground and it's not much really happening. And the majority of that round, from the moment of the takedown and the person established a mount position, then it's just this snooze fest. It's going to be some elbows. It's going to be some hammer fists, forearms, or whatnot. And just a lot of jockeying for position. And a lot of times you'll see those fights like that where, a takedown will happen somewhere within the first 30, 45 seconds of the round. And then, all but maybe 30 seconds of the remaining 30 seconds of the round is spent on the ground. And I was saying in a lot of these, if there's no real damage being done, screw activity. If there's no real damage being done, I believe that the ref should step in and stand them up. I think that they need to get like a 45-second clock or whatever, in the event of a takedown, that you're on a 45-second clock, and in that 45 seconds you have to establish some kind of meaningful blows, and consistently be able to keep that to extend it. Or after 45 seconds, it's the referee's decision, whether or not to stand you up. If he feel like it's a significant amount of activity that will allow one fighter to gain an advantage over another, because it's a mental thing. If I'm judging a fight, and even though a lot's not happening, if it was wrestling where you get your 2 points for your takedown, and then, riding time or whatnot. But because it's MMA, we don't, the judging is somewhat different, but it just leaves in an impression in the judge's mind that this person won this round. And all he did really was take a guy down. So it makes it harder for the other guy that's in the submissive position to establish or make any argument for the round. You see what I'm saying? And if you're in a 3-round fight, it's very critical and crucial. If it's a 5-round fight, you get a little more leeway. But you understand where I'm going at with this. It's like they need to figure something out. But John McCarthy got it right. Big John kept standing those guys back up. Because it was terrible. They was down, and it was like they was just trying to rest. Like, thank God. And they rested. There was a point, I want to say, like in the 2nd round, maybe like the last minute or so of the 2nd round, dude, Dada 5000 had like this deer in the headlights. Look, his eyes were all big, and he just looked scared, and he is like, come get me. And it was just crazy. Like, there would be times when they wouldn't even really could call it a takedown. It was more like a fall. Just a person holding on to him. One person holding on, but he's trying to get his rest too. So it was very, 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 very much a snooze fest. But Kimbo put them hands on him, knocked him out. But like they're saying that dude was suffering some type of a heart failure. I don't know if it was a heart attack or not, but this is what was being said. He was taken out of the arena on a stretcher, so maybe that leads to some credibility behind it. But either way, congratulations to you, Kimbo. But you got to work in your conditioning. You need to take you a 12-week conditioning program. I would suggest to you that you spend some more time, some serious time with your cousin, Dr. Roddy Ferguson, and get your ground game up. I mean, you need to take advantage of that. This dude is an Olympic gold medalist in judo. You know what I'm saying? Has a doctorate degree in sports medicine and sports physiology. How in the world do you not take advantage of that, man? Your ground game, your ground game should be so much better, so much more improved, just because you have somebody like that in your family. Man, you need to take advantage. Even if you have to pay the man for his services, that's what it takes, man. How in the world are you Roddy Ferguson's cousin and your ground game is that terrible? I mean, and you're not new to this, And one of the worst things that could have happened to Kimbo was when he left the UFC and he left MMA and went back to boxing, and he gained a bunch of weight. So he was maybe 10 pounds less than what he was when he was an internet sensation. That's not going to fly, One thing I can say, I thought the UFC was doing him a disservice when they had him fighting light heavyweight at a 205 weight limit, And I was just like, man, that's just too much weight for this dude to be shedding. But he gained in stamina and he gained in conditioning. you know. And even at that point, even at the best condition of his life, his conditioning was always a question mark. Okay, so that's one thing to improve because Rampage Jackson is in UFC. And right now, in Bellator, back in Bellator. And the way they set it up, Kimbo was fighting legacy type fights, grudge matches, if you will. He's a lot like a Butterbean. He's like the new Butterbean. For those you don't know, Butterbean was a guy that won like the nation's tough man contest, and he was very, very, very popular. And he was short. He was like 300 something pounds, 350, close to 400 pounds, a really big guy. But he was very, very popular, and he started boxing. He was a raw prospect who was a national tough man contest winner. And he cashed in on it and started boxing professionally. And he amassed a pretty good record over a short amount of time. And like I said, was immensely popular. And so what happened was, as he started going and moving from the 4 to 6 round preliminary type fights and getting into the 8s and the 10 round fights, he still was able to maintain an undefeated record, but then eventually he started losing. But he was still hugely popular. So then he decided to go back to I think 4 to 6 rounds. He was fighting exclusively in those time round lengths. And he became like the king of the 4 rounders or 6 rounders. And, I think they even made a championship for him. And so, just because he was that popular, had a big following. And I think to a lesser degree, Kimbo is sort of like the modern day version of that. But man, your conditioning needs to be better. Your takedown game, your ground game your grappling game needs to be better. Because Ken Shamrock, he easily took him down in their fight. But once they got back to their feet, Kimbo put them hands on him. So he always has a puncher's chance. But he just looked really, really bad. I have not, as an MMA fighter, I have not, as Kimbo being an MMA fighter, I've never seen him look that bad. Even when he lost to Seth Petrozelli, he didn't look as bad as he looked the other night against Dada 5000. And the fact that Dada 5000's conditioning was even worse than yours was, go figure. But that was the saving grace behind that. Okay, but again, the only person I could see you matching up against, logically next would be either Rampage Jackson or Bobby Lashley. And your conditioning sucks. You'll get seriously jacked up messing around with them two dudes. So you need to think about that before you sign on the dotted line. You ain't no punk and you ain't scared, but you got to face facts. I hope you really look at that fight footage and you learn from that. And you dedicate yourself to your conditioning and to your ground game. To be honest with you, Kimbo, you need to be no more than 220. I think he was 237, 238 for that fight. He needs to get down to about no more than about 220. I think your conditioning level will be so much better. Okay, so we're gonna leave that and go to the Royce Gracie Ken Shamrock 3 fight. I feel like the ref stopped the fight way too early. Yeah, Ken was in somewhat of a bad predicament, but I just didn't think that that Royce was doing, I don't really think that, that was that effective or whatever. For heaven's sakes, the man wasn't even bleeding from it. He complained about getting kneed in the groin. Again, I didn't sit there and study the replays of the fight to go back and really see if he really did or didn't. I may do it later, but either way, it was very, very much, if you will, a premature ejaculation.